have ended 7 unendable wars. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements.
It was supposed to be Donald Trump's big moment, the one where he finally claimed the recognition he had long desired, the Nobel Peace Prize. For years, Trump had hinted that his efforts around the world, especially in the Middle East, deserved the highest global honor for peace.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado.
But when the announcement came in October 2025, it wasn't his name that echoed across the world. It was hers, Maria Corina Machado, a Venezuelan opposition leader who had spent years fighting for democracy under the shadow of dictatorship. The news stunned Washington. The Nobel Committee in Oslo announced that the 2025 Peace Prize would go to Machado for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. Across Latin America, people celebrated, but inside the Trump administration, the reaction was far from joyful. The White House viewed it as a political statement and a direct snub against the president himself. To understand the shock, you have to understand who Maria Corina Machado is. She is not a traditional politician. For 2 decades, she has stood up to Venezuela's authoritarian regime, facing harassment, surveillance, and exile. She built her message around one powerful idea: ballots over bullets. Machado believed that real change could only come through democratic means, even when the cost was her own freedom. Her courage turned her into a symbol of hope. And now the Nobel Committee had turned her story into a global headline. But in Washington, the tone was bitter. Hours after the announcement, Trump's communications director, Stephen Chung, lashed out online, accusing the Nobel Committee of placing politics over peace. The Trump administration had been expecting, even preparing for the possibility that the president might be honored that year. His highly publicized Gaza peace plan had just gained traction, and supporters had loudly argued that Trump was the only world leader capable of breaking decades of stalemate in the Middle East. For Trump, who had long compared himself to past laureates, the Nobel represented a personal validation. And now it had gone to someone else. Still, in a surprising twist, Trump told reporters that he had spoken directly with Machado shortly after her win. "The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me," Trump said. She said, "I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it." He smiled and added, "A very nice thing to do." I didn't say, "Then give it to me," though I think she might have. It was the kind of half-serious, half-humorous line that Trump had built his brand on: proud, charming, and just slightly self-congratulatory. Machado herself confirmed the call in an interview with the Spanish newspaper El País, though she declined to reveal details. She did, however, publicly thank Trump for what she called his decisive support for Venezuela's democratic movement. In her acceptance message, she dedicated the Nobel Prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Trump. It was a statement that surprised both her allies and critics, and one that seemed to make the White House's anger even more puzzling. Just a year earlier, many of Trump's closest allies had actually nominated Machado for the prize. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, now serving as Secretary of State and Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz, were part of the group that sent her nomination letter to Oslo in late 2024. In that letter, they described her as a woman of rare courage, moral clarity, and unyielding dedication to democratic ideals. Trump himself had praised her in 2023 as a freedom fighter who must stay safe and alive. But when she finally won, those same figures went silent. Former envoy Richard Grenell dismissed the entire award, writing that the Nobel Prize died years ago. The shift was striking, from admiration to outrage in a matter of hours. Political analysts quickly noticed something deeper. Benjamin Gadon, a former official from the National Security Council, said the committee's decision seemed to be sending a quiet message, not only to Venezuela, but to the United States itself. The Nobel Committee would prefer both the U.S. and the Venezuelan opposition continue to fight peacefully for change, he explained. The White House's reaction reflects frustration that Trump wasn't chosen, and discomfort with that critique. The award, it seemed, had become more than recognition. It had become a mirror, reflecting the tension between power, politics, and peace. But the story didn't end there. As global leaders weighed in, one voice in particular drew attention: Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking during a trip to Tajikistan, Putin commented, "Whether the current US president deserves the Nobel Prize or not, I don't know. But he's really doing a lot to resolve complex crises that last for years, even decades." Within hours, Trump shared the clip on his Truth Social account, writing, "Thank you to President Putin." The irony was impossible to miss. The same man leading a brutal war in Ukraine was now praising Trump as a peacemaker. Behind all the noise, Trump's administration had maintained a deep involvement in Venezuela's political crisis. His government had denounced Nicolas Maduro's regime as illegitimate and deployed military assets to the Caribbean, under the banner of counter-narco-trafficking. Supporters saw it as a noble stand for democracy. Critics viewed it as a pretext for regime change. Either way, the Trump administration's heavy presence made the Nobel Committee's choice even more provocative. It seemed to favor the ideal of peaceful resistance over political confrontation. Still, the Venezuelan activists' win may have been influenced in part by the very policies Trump had supported. For years, she had depended on US sanctions and diplomatic backing to keep pressure on Maduro's regime. Trump's administration had recognized her as a legitimate voice of the Venezuelan people, and that international recognition helped her build credibility. The irony was thick. The man who helped make her a global figure now found himself overshadowed by her victory. Whether you see the Nobel decision as a slight against Trump or a tribute to democracy, one thing is clear. It was one of the most dramatic political moments of the year. A Venezuelan dissident, a US president, and a Norwegian committee had collided in a story that blended heroism, irony, and ambition. Machado's Nobel became a reminder that peace isn't just about negotiation or power. It's about conviction. And for Trump, it reignited the question he has never stopped asking. Why does the world never give him the credit he thinks he deserves? As for Maria Corina Machado, her struggle continues. From hiding in exile, she has become the face of resistance in Venezuela. Her Nobel Peace Prize may not end her country's suffering overnight, but it has given her movement new legitimacy and a voice the world can't ignore. And for Donald Trump, it may not be the end of his Nobel dream. If history has taught us anything, it's that he never stops chasing what he believes is rightfully his. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of global politics, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our next deep dive into the world's most surprising political twists.